to Super Bowl 55. We are with you for the next 2 hours, taking up till 12 o'clock today, as we will lead you into Blaine and Mickey at noon this afternoon. Hello, BG. What's going on, boys? There's no football.
Why didn't I get on?
Emily. Miss Emily.
Yes.
I forwarded the link on to Tri-County Electric. Paul Thompson, I think, is on here from Tri-County Electric. Going to watch the presentation also.
Okay.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know there are still a couple more maybe trying to log in, but we are recording this session and we'll be able to share it with any member that would like to have the information. For those of you that don't know me, I think most of you on the call do. My name's Eric Sexton. I'm the executive director here at the Barren River Area Development District, chiming in from my hometown of Edmonton in Metcalfe County this morning. But we have some wonderful support there at the office today. I know that Emily is on the call, and Katie and Mary. And what I'm going to do is kick this over to Emily. She's going to be the lead on this announcement about the Community Development Block Grant COVID funding program that's for utility assistance relief. We want to make sure that we're getting all of our member governments the information that they need, and we want you to know that we're here to assist any of you that would like assistance through the application process. I believe, I don't think that she's on yet, but hopefully joining us shortly will also be the new executive director of the Community Action of South Central Kentucky, Miss Carla Brown, and hopefully she'll be able to join on as well. But at this time, I'm going to just ask you all to put yourselves on mute, and we'll definitely have some time for some questions, but I'm going to turn it over to Emily and her team as they navigate a short presentation for you.
Thanks. So we're going to go through just a few slides that'll give you some background information on this program. As Eric said, there are several members of our team on the call who are listening in who'll be able to assist throughout this process. But first of all, this is covering the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Response Program. Looking at what its purpose is, it is to provide assistance for households or customers who have been financially impacted by COVID-19 and who are in danger of having their utilities disconnected due to their inability to make payment. We do need to note that service is only provided to those customers within the jurisdiction of the grantee. So if you, I'll add a special note here, if you have a city-owned water utility and they service someone outside your city limits, if the city is the applicant, that person that lives outside city limits but is on city utility would not be eligible. We'll cover that a little bit more in a few slides, but I just want to make that note first. And then additionally, eligible utilities for this assistance would include water, wastewater, natural gas, electric, and any other heating and cooling type of utility. I will also note that the state is recommending water and wastewater because there are fewer resources out there to help those utilities. So looking ahead, who can apply for this funding? Just like your other CDBG funding, only your city or your county can apply. So only the city or the county can be the direct applicant. Additionally, this is not open to entitlement jurisdictions. So you have to be a non-entitlement city or county. So looking again, who cannot apply? We as the ad cannot apply. Utility companies directly cannot apply. Individuals cannot apply. And then your community action agencies, your nonprofits that'll offer the intermediary assistance, they cannot be the applicant. So the applicant can only be the city or the county. Also, special note here, if you're a city or county owned utility provider, there are some differences for you. You can apply through the city or county, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. So for your threshold information, as with your general CDBG, you can, this is a little different than your normal CDBG, but you can have an open CDBG project and apply for this grant. You do have to have audits current and in good standing. And if you have program income, your program income reports must be also current and in good standing. Now, specific to this grant program, you can only have one of these utility assistance grants open at a time. You can have multiple CDBGs, but only one utility assistance. And then we cannot do any multi-jurisdictional applications. So we can't partner with cities or city and county partnership. They won't let us do that. And then finally, this is also subject to review of past performance of a grantee. So DLG retains the right to deny applications based upon past performance. And then also each grant for this program will meet the HUD national objective of benefit to low to moderate income persons. And specifically, that's the CFR number on the screen. That's more of an information for you. And we will include that if you work with us on your application, or whoever is going to submit your application, that's the number that they will need to put in for the eligibility piece. So looking at the process for this, funding is going to be made available by DLG. And then an application will, there we go. Okay, so funding is made available by DLG. The city and county will work with us or whomever you choose for your grant administration to submit the application. The city and county will then work with a nonprofit in implementing this program. That nonprofit will work directly with your households or your customers and your utility provider. So the nonprofit will pay the utility on behalf of the household. The household will not receive any funding through this. The city or county will enter into a legally binding agreement with this nonprofit of your choice, and then that nonprofit will make the payments. So on a household information, the requirements for individual households, and this will all be done by that nonprofit that you work with. So the household will have to complete an income verification form at the time of their application. They're going to have to provide proof of residency and proof of income. So that's going to be a driver's license or a state ID, a copy of their current utility statement with their residential address, and then proof of their household income over the last month or the past 4 weeks. Again, payments are going to be made exclusively by the nonprofit to the utility. And then each household may receive up to $250 a month in assistance for 6 consecutive months. They must also be in arrears, and if applicable, they need to be in receipt of a notice to disconnect anytime from January 21st of last year to present. Now, several of our utilities are not issuing notices of disconnect. We understand that, but we do need to, when we submit the applications, we will need to show that the account is in arrears. And then finally, each household will have to complete a duplication of benefit certification. This is basically ensuring that government funding isn't being used to pay for the same utility twice. So from a utility provider standpoint, funding is only available when other sources are exhausted. So this is key and kind of where the focus on water and wastewater has come in. There are other resources available for heating and cooling expenses, such as LIHEAP and HEA. So if you're going after assistance for those utilities, we're going to have to prove that the other sources have been exhausted. Additionally, each utility assisted is going to have to provide some program guidelines to assist customers with any outstanding remaining unpaid bills after the assistance has been provided. Basically, this means they're going to have to give some kind of plan that says, hey, if we can't pay all of the arrear amount, we're still not going to cut them off because we've received government assistance to keep them going. We're going to work with them to get them back whole, and we'll need some kind of plan on what that work with is going to look like. We will also need budget information from each utility, including the number of accounts in arrears and their current and projected funding amount that is needed to make them whole. So if you are a grantee-owned utility, a municipal-owned utility, a county-owned utility, we're going to need to work with you one-on-one because there are different restrictions for those types of utilities. Particularly, it's going to take into account if you've received prior grant funding for your system and how you operate your profit versus nonprofit income on that. So we'll get with you on an individual basis for that because we'll have to back out some of the rate information. So when we look at steps of applying, the first step that we're going to need is to determine our area of need. So cities and counties, what types of utilities do you want to assist with? And then how will those types of utilities handle the payments and delinquencies? So you can choose, hey, we're going to focus on water, wastewater. We're going to focus on heating and cooling. We're going to focus on natural gas. So what type do you want to focus on? And then within that type, who serves your area and how are they going to handle payments and delinquencies through this process? And then secondly, what nonprofit do you want to work with? So you will need to work with a nonprofit such as Community Action or others in the area. This nonprofit will be your liaison between your individual and your utility company and will make that direct payment. And then finally, we'll need to figure out how much funding you need. So the application goes up to $200,000 maximum per jurisdiction. You may not need that all. What we'll do is we'll look at your current utility focus and what the current outstanding balance is and what projected outstanding balance is for the next few months and get to a number. You may come in at $200,000, you might come in at $50,000. We just have to support the number that we're going to ask for. So information that we're going to need the quickest to do this. We need to submit a clearinghouse if you're interested in applying. The clearinghouse process can take around 30 days. So we want to go ahead and get you in and get you started on that. We're also going to need to schedule a public hearing. They have reduced the requirements for public hearings on this program. So instead of 7 days notice, we need to give 5 days notice. Again, since it's a coronavirus specific program, we can also do these public hearings virtually, but we will have to make every effort to have them at a time and a date when the public can attend. So if you're interested in applying, please let me, my team know so we can start this clearinghouse and we can get with you on a public hearing date and time. So generally looking at the timeline for applications, we're having this information meeting today. In February, we'll want to work to get that clearinghouse approval, determine what kind of utility assistance you want to provide. We're going to want to know which nonprofit you want to work with and get a legally binding agreement started with you, and then gather the information from the utility providers on how that provider will handle payments and delinquencies throughout the process. We're looking to submit applications in March. And then in spring, grants should be awarded and we should begin able to start offering that assistance. Again, your nonprofit will take applications from households to pay the utility bill. You do need to have your program expended, closed, all good and done by 2023. And then on the screen now is the contact info for me and my team, and we will open it up for questions. I know we went through that hard and heavy and rather fast. So we have recorded that information and we are now open for questions if anybody has any.
And Emily, while maybe they're thinking of their questions or we look in chat, I will just reiterate, since we've recorded this, we'll be more than glad to put it in a link and send it out to all of our judges and mayors so that you can use this as a refresher. We can probably also attach the PowerPoint to that as well. Emily, you did a great job of going over the nuts and bolts. So at this time, we'll open up any questions. I think there is a question in chat, Emily, that says, are accounts that defaulted on their payment plans eligible?
I will have to double check that. I do believe they would be, but again, I would want to just make sure.
All right. And what other questions might we have? If you have one, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Does these utilities have to be specific? Can it just be all water or all electric, or do we have to spread it out, water, electric, gas?
So you can approach it whichever way you would like. From an application standpoint, it may be easier to focus on one, but it doesn't mean that you have to. What you will have to do is show the need for whatever you focus on. So if you're going to cover more than one type of utility, you're going to have to show how other resources for that utility have been exhausted and how there's still a need for resources within that. And then you can also just pick one utility and say, hey, we're going to focus on this. But again, we're still going to have to show the need for whatever we do.
I want to make sure I understood correctly that the county can apply, and then within a county, if there's, say, 3 cities, each one of those cities applies, correct?
You can, correct. And I'm glad you brought this up. So the county can apply. Each city within the county can apply. If the city within the county owns their own utility, right? But that city serves any person that's outside that city's jurisdiction, that city application will not cover that person that lives outside the city, even if it's on city-owned utility. So at that point, that person that's on city-owned utility but lives outside the city would have to apply under the county's funding.
April, that's a great question, because early on, one of our questions by many of you had been, can we do joint applications? And I do think that this is the perfect project for joint applications, but DLG has told us we cannot do that. And we're making a little assumption here, but really that's coming from that HUD guidance at the federal level. So I know that's been something that has would be beneficial, but we're just not able to do it this time. So that the reason why I'm mentioning this is the ability to work within your counties and cities together will actually play a role, because you might be able to help each other out and your citizens out.
And it increases the amount of funding that one county can get, because the county can get 200, each city can get 200, whereas they just went with the county, that's only one pot of money instead of 4.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will have to, I will just note too, when we're putting in multiple applications within one county, our budgeting information, that same kind of pot of need, will have to reflect that we need the full 200,000 amount, or if we're applying for less. Either way, it's still an increased pot where you're not having to double dip into any one pot of money.
And I know before that you had to be CDBG certified to apply for CDBG funds. And is that still something that is true? So that will have to go through Brad? I know they really wanted you to focus and go. CDBG really leaned towards having the Brad office be the one who was certified in that. Is that still true, or is that something the city, county can apply for on their own?
So if you have a certified staff on your team, you can do this on your own. If you do not, you do need to use a CDBG certified person, just because of the regulatory requirements on the administration and submission of the documents.
And will you guys have to administer the grant once it's received also, or is that something we do at the city level?
So if you work with us, we'll also administer it. But it's the same kind of answer. If you have someone on your team who's certified, you could do it yourself. If you don't, we're happy to. We have certified staff and would do the writing and the administration.
Okay.
And then I see another question in chat as well, to go into greater detail regarding the requirement of Community Action Agency having exhausted their funding first. This will really play a greater part into those home applicants that may also qualify for LIHEAP assistance. And so in our application, what we're going to have to show is that the LIHEAP assistance has already been spent out, and that's why we need additional funding for this particular utility. So if you're looking at heating and cooling assistance, you're going to have to show, whether it's Community Action or any other agency that provides assistance, that assistance has already been fully expended and there's still a need for more. that's a direct result of COVID impacts to be able to apply for that additional funding. I hope that makes sense.
Emily, I have a question.
Sure.
If the county is awarded the grant and the city is not awarded the grant, can the county use that money to pay for city utilities or only county utilities?
So it is our current understanding that the county can pay for anyone within the county, including city jurisdictions.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I do see a question here on what is the admin fee by Brad to administer the application. We are awaiting guidance from the state on the fees for both the administration on our side and the fees for the nonprofits involvement. So I don't have a better answer for that at this point. I'm happy to forward that to you as soon as we receive guidance ourselves.
And Emily, just to reiterate, so your nonprofit provider will receive some type of administration fee. DLG is still working on the rate or the number or the percent on that. We did have a little speculation early on about the admin fee being somewhere near the 5% mark, but we don't know that for certain. So again, like Emily, we're going to take a cautious approach and wait for a little bit of guidance on that. But I do know that DLG is working on both the admin fees for the ad and for the nonprofit. What other questions can we answer for you all? Those have been excellent questions so far.
Emily, what would be some examples of other nonprofit agencies other than Community Action that would be working with this?
So it's really up to you on the community level what nonprofit you want to work with. It needs to be a nonprofit that can establish a relationship with your utilities and with your households. There's going to be some specific requirements for them for taking individual applications and processing those applications and making sure that they meet the federal requirements for giving the assistance. And then there's going to be some requirements for actually making the payment to the utility. And then Eric may have some more information to chime in as well.
Just make sure that your nonprofit is truly a certified 501c nonprofit agency because that will play a role. Community actions are the agencies that DLG has referenced the most, but it's not exclusive to community actions. Plus, we don't know exactly what community actions capacity will be throughout the entire 10-county region. So we are expecting in the Brad region there to be use of community action as well as other nonprofits. But those nonprofits can be faith-based nonprofits. They can be any type of nonprofit as long as they're set up and as long as you feel at the county city level that they're qualified and able to help administer this program.
Thank you.
Hey, Emily and Eric, Miss Russell and I were texting each other back and forth, and she come up with a great question here, and on our behalf, if you have more than one nonprofit, how do you keep them from double dipping? I mean, is there something that you all have in place, or does that all on us?
When you say double dipping, do you mean individuals or the nonprofit itself?
Well, like we have two that I know. What if they try to apply for each one? I mean, how do we track that?
That's a good question.
How do you make sure a city citizen doesn't apply for city funds and county funds and then get both?
So part of that, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, is in that duplication of benefit certification. So that's going to be a federal certification. So that nonprofit is going to federally certify by, I guess, questioning the utility that this is not a duplication of services.
That's correct.
So an individual who lives in the city could apply for $250 a month for water and then turn around and apply out of the county funds for $250 worth of electric. So then it wouldn't be a duplication of benefits. It would just be that person double dipping.
Right. So I would anticipate that part of the cities and counties working together would be that if we know that a city within our county has also received funding, we're going to refer all the citizens to go to the city, just so that we can have that county funding for people who don't have it through their city, which should catch some of that. But again, the example that you just gave where there are two different utilities, that would be a risk.
And that's where these partnerships between the counties and cities are going to be important, because you'll be able to prioritize, hopefully, and direct your citizens and your utilities in the form of the relief and how that process will flow.
Emily, I might have just misunderstood this, say like in Cave City, we're working with water and sewer, and you have this person who qualifies. Would they be eligible for, like, through the county for like gas assistance?
So at this point, I think they would be. We'll need to get some additional clarifications on how the state wants to approach that. But at this point, my understanding is that they would be. But again, that's what we were kind of talking about in partnering with the cities and the counties and knowing who's providing what and who's going to direct which citizen.
Yeah, babe.
And it's up to that $250 threshold. So I'm assuming that could hypothetically be combined utilities, my electric and my water, or my gas and my sewer.
That's a really good point. And I do think that that's where you're going to catch them. So if they have $250 of assistance in an electric and they've already received that, that's that household's maximum. So they can't come back and apply for another $250. They get $250 period for their household for 6 consecutive months.
Keep those brains churning. You all have some really good questions, and we want to make sure we can answer all of them. Are there other questions of this group at this time?
So basically, if the county and all the cities uses the same not-for-profit, that would be the best case scenario, because then they see everything. The same people are handling all the same monies, would be my guess.
I would find that to be easier, but not required.
Exactly. Ideally, that's the ideal setup for this, because it does help to guard this process. But yes, as Emily said, it doesn't mean that that's exactly how it has to work for your county or city. All right, anything else, guys? Emily, anything else from your standpoint?
Not on our end. Just if you are interested in applying, please shoot us an email, give us a call, let us know so we can get that process started with you. And there'll be quite a bit of information to start gathering. So we'll want to get with you and get that process rolling.
Okay, and
Emily, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes, this is Mayor Greer from Gamelia. How about garbage? Is that available? I mean, can we get it for our garbage collection also?
Unfortunately, not at this time. It's limited to water, wastewater, natural gas, electric, and any other heating or cooling utility.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We need it bad.
Totally understand.
Okay, this is Judge Chick. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir, Judge.
Okay, the biggest question I got, where do you find out where the need is, and what are, do we get it from utility companies? And then the second question, I'm not in the utility business, but I do have 3 water districts that are set up and they've got their own board. Do we work with those water districts, or how do we notify them?
Right. So on both of those, you will work with utilities to determine needs. So you'll want to know from your utility how many accounts they currently have in arrears and what that funding looks like for how much back payment is due. And then from an application standpoint, what we'll look at is if you determine, hey, we want to focus on water and wastewater, then we'll look at every utility provider in that field within your county to get their information. The grants are not set up in a way to where you have to only use one utility provider. There are pieces of information that are needed from each utility provided, but it's not limited to say, hey, we're only going to work with this one water district. You can work with however many water districts you have.
Okay. And of course, in our situation, we would need the Brad to work to do the administration of it for us.
Not a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Judge, that is a good question. And early on, I had a utility that contacted me and said, how do we sign up? And I said, well, whoa. We're not really going to work directly with the utilities. The county cities will. But this was a utility. I just asked them, I said, hey, can you give, just out of curiosity, can you give me a ballpark figure of what your delinquencies would be during COVID? And they came back with like $362,000. And I said, okay, what area do you serve? Well, they actually serve 5 different counties and 3 are in the Brad region. So I said, what your elected officials are going to want to know is what is the delinquencies for their county. So you're going to need to be able to ballpark at least that for application purposes to the county level. So I feel like when the elected leaders reach out to their utilities, it may take them a minute or 2, but they're going to be able to get you some ballpark figures on arrears. And then that should help you to determine and figure out what types of utilities that you're going to be able to offer in your program. Again, working with that nonprofit.
Okay, this is Judge Chick again, if y'all can hear me.
Yes, sir.
Of course, if the county itself receives a check, and we'll have to have that check, and we'll have to make a copy of it, and we'll have to amend it into our budget before we can be a pass-through. And that is a month to 6-week process through the Department of Local Government. With that being said, if people are behind on their utilities now, I look for it to be at least the 3rd quarter of this year before any money is really available for payments.
So DLG has told us it could be up to a 60-day process for this. So I would anticipate your estimates are pretty spot on.
Okay, well, I just want to clear that up because I don't know if utilities will wait 6 months for a payment. So, but thank you.
And that's a valid point.
Hey, Eric, this is Carla Brown.
Hey, Carla.
Hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm sorry I was late for the call. I had a meeting with my board this morning, so I just wanted to introduce myself as the new Executive Director for Community Action. Leslie Talley was on the call for me this morning, so I'm sure she'll fill me in this afternoon.
She certainly will, Carla. Welcome to, I know you're not a stranger to Community Action, as my understanding, or the region, but welcome to your new role. We look forward to working with you. And Carla, we have recorded the call and we'll send you a link to it as well, but Leslie will do a good job of updating you, but welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have 2 more questions in chat as well. So the first one is, are there privacy restrictions that would prevent a Google Doc list of recipients that could be updated from both agencies? I would anticipate there are some privacy restrictions with that, but again, we'll have to double check that to let you know. We can follow up. My knee-jerk response is yes, there would be some privacy restrictions. The second question is, will the grant pay directly to the utilities or to the city and county government to disperse out to the utilities? Excellent question. The way that the grant will flow is it will be one drawdown from DLG to the city. The city will then pay in one payment to the nonprofit, and the nonprofit will then make the individual payments to the utilities.
Okay,
Hey,
this is Mayor Greer again from Gamaliel. We get our water from Monroe County Water District, and also we get our gas from the natural gas Spectre and Tompkinsville. Do we just get the people that's in the rear from them, or how does that work?
So yes, so you would need you wouldn't have to know the individual's names. You would really just need ballpark numbers of, hey, we have this many accounts that are behind, and that represents this much money.
Okay. I've got that now. So,
Awesome. And you want it for just your city limits?
yes, yes. Yeah, that's all we deal with, is just Gamaliel city limits.
Perfect.
Emily, this is Scotty Turner. I just want to piggyback on what Mayor Greer was talking about there, because as far as the Monroe County Water District being able to apply for this, they can't, right? Because they're a private utility, so each city would have to, or Gamaliel and Fountain Run would have to request the funding for them through their city.
Or the county. So yes, the cities can apply, or Monroe County as a whole can apply. If Monroe County as a whole can apply, that's one application for up to $200,000. If your city and Gamaliel applies and the county applies, that's potentially $600,000 in 3 separate applications.
Yeah, well, the city furnishes our own, but Gamaliel and Fountain Run gets it from Monroe County Water District.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I would really recommend that each of our counties highly consider putting in an application, and then based upon the need, looking at it at a city level as well. So if you have a city that you know has a very high need, and you also have county residents that have a high need, I would suggest you do 2 applications, one for the county, one for the city. But at minimum, I would suggest you do a county one to be able to kind of safety net blanket catch your population.
It looks like we have one more chat question, Emily. I'll read to you. If the utility is city-owned, example, Auburn Water Sewer, would the nonprofit still come into play? If it still has to go through the nonprofit, should the cities just let the nonprofit apply for the grant and disperse, similar to the first round of funding?
So really good questions. If the utility is city-owned, the nonprofit does still come into play. The nonprofit, however, is not an eligible applicant for this funding. So the city or county has to be the applicant and then enter into a legally binding agreement with the nonprofit.
When does that agreement have to be made? Before you get the grant or after you get the grant?
Let me double check on the timing, but traditionally it's been before you make the disbursement of payment. But
Okay.
with this one, they may want to see it with the application documents. Let me confirm.
Do you already have that agreement, or is that something we need to work with our city attorneys to get?
That was something we're trying to confirm as well. In the past, they have provided us with some samples, but I haven't seen one yet. So let me double check.
In April, we are hoping that we can get templates for you all on those documents to make the process as easy as possible. And I'll also just mention this for city or county owned utilities. We mentioned the process about if you have a federal grant, and there's some stipulations about if that grant, it was for equipment and it's depreciated and your rate reflects that depreciation, you have to back that out. So that process is just a little hard for me to wrap my mind around, but I will tell you that on Tuesday, DLG is going to set in a call with one of our Northern Kentucky cities that own a utility, and they're going to kind of be the guinea pig for city-owned utilities that might have that issue of a federal grant that impacted their rate, and try to come up with a formula to help us. So I do want you to know there's some help on the way there too, if that is your case in your city. These have all been really great questions. We've really enjoyed our time with you on the call today. If there are no other questions, we'll dismiss this call. Again, I want to give a big shout out to Emily, Mary, and Katie, because they're going to be taking the lead on this and helping you all and providing this overview today. I want to thank our DLG field reps for being on here with us. Please call our hand if we've said anything, Alex or Elton, that we weren't supposed to say. And again, I just want to thank all of you for being on here today. Brad stands ready to help you. We want to help you through this process because it's a good opportunity for your communities to get some much needed help during this pandemic. Anything else, Emily?
Nothing else on my end. Just give us a call if you're interested, and we'll get your application rolling.
Okay, give them a call.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Great job. Thanks.